Can legalism lack compassion? Can church leaders focus on pride instead of humility? Do we have free will to accept or decline God's invitation? Would we give up everything for the gospel? Let's look at Luke 14. Can legalism lack compassion for our neighbor's human needs? And it came to pass, as he went into the house of one of the chief Pharisees to eat bread on the Sabbath day, that they watched him. And behold, there was a certain man before him who had the dropsy. And Jesus answering spoke to the lawyers and Pharisees, saying, Is it lawful to heal on the Sabbath day? And they held their peace. And he took him and healed him, and let him go. And answered them, saying, Which of you shall have an ass or an ox fallen into a pit, and will not straightway pull him out on the Sabbath day? And they couldn't answer him again to these things. How foolish are pride and self-promotion! How wise is humility! And he was telling a parable to the invited guests, when he noticed how they were picking out the places of honor at the table, saying to them, When you're invited by someone to a wedding feast, don't recline at the place of honor, lest someone more highly regarded than you be invited by him. And he who invited you both will come and say to you, Give your place to this man. And then in shame you proceed to occupy the last place. But when you are invited, go and recline at the last place, so that when the one who's invited you comes, he may say to you, Friend, move up higher. Then you'll have honor in the sight of all who recline at the table with you. For everyone who exalts himself will be humbled, and he who humbles himself will be exalted. Do real blessings come from hobnobbing with celebrities or the forsaken? Now he also went on to say to the one who had invited him, Whenever you give a luncheon or a dinner, don't invite your friends, your brothers, your relatives, nor wealthy neighbors. Otherwise they may also invite you to a meal in return, and that'll be your repayment. But whenever you give a banquet, invite people who are poor, who have disabilities, who are limping, and people who are blind, and you'll be blessed, since they don't have the means to repay you, for you'll be repaid at the resurrection of the righteous. Does God force us to come to the wedding banquet, the kingdom of God, or does he give us the free will to say no? When one of those at the table with him heard this, he said to Jesus, Blessed is the one who will eat at the feast of the kingdom of God. Jesus replied, A certain man was preparing a great banquet and invited many guests. At the time of the banquet he sent his servant to tell those who'd been invited, Come, for everything is now ready. But they all alike began to make excuses. The first said, I've just bought a field, and I must go and see it. Please excuse me. Another said, I've just bought 5 yoke of oxen, and I'm on my way to try them out. Please excuse me. Still another said, I just got married, so I can't come. What'll happen to those who turn down the invitation? So that servant came and reported these things to his master. Then the master of the house, being angry, said to his servant, Go out quickly into the streets and lanes of the city, and bring in here the poor, and the maimed, and the lame, and the blind. And the servant said, Master, it's done, as you commanded, and still there's room. Then the master said to the servant, Go out into the highways and hedges, and compel them to come in, that my house may be filled. For I say to you that none of those men who were invited shall taste my supper. Are we willing, if needed, to give up everything we own for the sake of the gospel? A large crowd was following Jesus. He turned around and said to them, If you want to be my disciple, you must by comparison hate everyone else, your father and mother, wife and children, brothers and sisters, yes, even your own life. Otherwise you cannot be my disciple. And if you don't carry your own cross and follow me, you cannot be my disciple. But don't begin until you count the cost. For who would begin construction of a building without first calculating the cost to see if there's enough money to finish it? Otherwise, you might complete only the foundation before running out of money, and then everyone would laugh at you. They would say, there's the person who started that building and couldn't afford to finish it. Or what king would go out to war against another king without first sitting down with his counselors to discuss whether his army of 10,000 could defeat the 20,000 soldiers marching against him? And if he can't, he'll send a delegation to discuss terms of peace while the enemy's still far away. So you cannot become my disciple without giving up everything you own. As salt is no longer useful if mixed, are we useless if our focus is mixed? Salt is good, but if the salt becomes flat and tasteless, with what do you season it? It's fit neither for the soil nor for the manure pile. It's thrown out. He who has ears to hear, let him hear. Can legalism lack compassion? Can church leaders focus on pride instead of humility? Do we have free will to accept or decline God's invitation? Would we give up everything for the gospel? You decide.